Hello and welcome to Africa Business Weekly, where we bring you some of the most impactful business stories across sub-Saharan Africa. I am Akin Obakeye. Now, it's been a very busy week for business news on the continent, and we'll start the show from the southern part of Africa, where Tanya Abimana is standing by to give us a run-through of the key stories this week in South Africa.
First up, with developments in sub-Saharan Africa, CNBC Africa's Fifi Peters caught up with Zambia's Minister of Trade and Commerce, Chipoka Mulenga, for an exclusive interview which unpacked the country's role in advancing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
The African Continental Free Trade Area is not yet in effect. It's yet in discussion phase, waiting to go into implementation phase. What is happening right now is there are many concerns that African countries are raising, Zambia included. You may be aware that we just clocked 1 year in office, while the African Continental Free Trade discussions have always been underway long before we assumed office. But definitely our focus as a new Dawn government is to make sure that the African Continental Free Trade Area addresses the aspirations of every country in Africa if we are going to make a single market a success. Before we implement the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we must ask ourselves questions like, how is COMESA, Common Market for East and Southern Africa, working for Zambia? Is Zambia benefiting, or are we just a passenger? Or are we only being used as a conduit for success of other countries? We go to the SADC, Southern African Development Cooperation. How is it working for Zambia? Is it helping our trade in the Southern African region? Or have we just been passengers as well? Once we see our weaknesses, which we have done, and our strength, and now we package them in such a way that even when we go into the African Continental Free Trade Area, not only Zambia will benefit, not only the strongest African economy will benefit, but including the least African economic country will gain out of it.
All right.
So there are several concerns that we have raised as a new government to our brothers and sisters in Ghana regarding how we hope to see the African Continental Free Trade Area operationalized.
All right.
And among the things that we have raised to the Secretariat are the concerns on the rules of origin. You may be aware, owing also to the growth of this economy that you have just talked about, our government, the president has always been very clear. We want to focus on value addition for our raw materials. For many years now, Zambia has been very much strong in the production of copper, among many other mineral resources, other than semi-precious minerals like diamonds and emeralds. Zambia has been strong in agriculture, producing maize, which you may call corn in other parts of this world. But all we have done with this resource is take it outside the country in its raw form, including timber, which we just cut and logs, and it goes like that. But we want to change how we do business. We want to give value addition to this, because when we give value addition to this, it will not externalize jobs, it will limit capital flight, it will create employment for our people, among many other good things that we see to be supporting our economic recovery agenda.
All right.
But to achieve this, we need to democratize how trade should be done and work alongside with strong economies that should come and set up business in Zambia.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you. So just to relay my understanding, I mean, just even looking at a report in front of me on my screen, just to say that the AfCFTA, it actually did come into force on the 1st of January 2021, but there are countries that haven't used it or operationalized it to its full. I mean, I'm just looking at the fact that Nigeria is also lagging behind in fully implementing it, and just also hearing your comments on that to say that there are discussions that you're having with the Secretariat before it's all systems go for Zambia. There's certain areas that they need to address. So let's talk about beneficiation then and value add.
One thing I can tell you for certain is Zambia has got all these mineral wealth that we're talking about. And over the years, with interaction with the international community in the West, America, within the African region, we have built management capacity. But all we have to do is sharpen our skills. And therefore, we need to integrate with our colleagues within the region.
All right.
And outside the region as well. And financial capacity, as you may be aware, we are trying to build our economy resource-wise. We are just coming from an era where we're grappling with debt, which our government is working so hard to see how we can restructure it and reprofile our debt portfolio. So we need resources from our colleagues around the region and outside to make sure that we do work on full beneficiation of the mineral resource that we have. Definitely, we have to work together.
Yeah. Circling back to your comment on the conversations you're having with the Secretariat right now, just regarding the rules of origin. What has their response been so far, and when do you expect finality or clarity in that regard?
It's been a very serious source of concern, which I think I should also give accolades to the Secretariat. They responded very positively on the concerns that we've raised among many other African countries, and we are discussing it. And I think next week, a team of technical people from my ministry will be traveling to Ghana to see how best we can advance our discussion on trade, among many other things. But definitely the response has been positive, and I cannot, it would be premature of me to give a finality on that one. I leave that in the hands of the Secretariats to guide. All I can assure you for now is that we've raised our concerns and they've been positively received, and discussions are underway so that no country in Africa will be left behind or will feel unduly represented. So once we fully operationalize the African Continental Free Trade Area, it is an all-inclusive project.
And next on the Southern Africa Economic Agenda, CNBC Africa's Godfrey Mutizwa spoke to Riaz Hafaji, the CEO of car manufacturing company Mete, about one of many billion-rand investments in efforts to localize car manufacturing. Let's listen in.
Localization is a big part of the South African Automotive Master Plan. It's one of the key pillars. Localization and job creation are two of the key pillars, which as component suppliers, that's really up our alley, because an automotive original equipment manufacturer, an OEM, they assemble the vehicle in their factories. It's the component suppliers that from first principles make the component that goes into that assembly. And so we take aluminium, plastic, steel, rubber, and we make, we mold, we make, we join, we weld into components that then get assembled with the OEM. So the technology that goes into what we do is quite sophisticated. We need technical partners for that. We need a lot of capital. We have to pick very carefully what capital we do spend our money on. And then we work with the OEM on volumes and return on investment so that we have a good business case. So localization in the Ranger is bolstered by the government's APDP program, the incentive program, that stipulates a certain level of localization that needs to be in as early as possible, and then it grows. So at the moment, the average is, sort of around the 40% mark overall for the industry. We're going to try and get it to the 60% mark by 2035. That's the aim. And a lot of that is component industry localization. That creates jobs, that makes us more sustainable.
Absolutely. And we can only salute you for that. There's no question about that. Those are badly needed jobs, as you would know. But I was also wondering, there's of course this transition to electric vehicles. And I was wondering what your group is thinking around that, whether any of your customers, whether that changes the scope of your relations with your customers, or we still need, of course, the comfortable seats and the different parts and components that go into making a car.
Well, most of our subsidiaries are well positioned for the switch to new energy vehicles because we make a range of components that are not specifically in internal combustion engine focused. So we're always going to have slightly different components, maybe in a slightly different way. There could be more exterior plastic parts, so it could help us in actually generating more business potentially. But the shift to NEV vehicles will be one that we'll take in its natural course. If we need technical support, we'll ask our partners for that. If we need new equipment, it'll be part of CapEx plans and so forth. So we see the NEV opportunity as an opportunity for us in the future.
Let's now move to East Africa and find out some stories that shaped headlines this week.
Well, thanks, Akin. Now, 5 years since the historic signing of the agreement to create the African Continental Free Trade Area, a lot still remains to be done to fully implement the deal. In this exclusive interview, I spoke to Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, on what will be needed to fully integrate a market of 1.3 billion people under this unique trade agreement.
Are countries that have concerns about, for example, the area of rules of origin. There are countries that want assurances that there will not be dumping or that there won't be import surges that then distort domestic markets. And this is natural, of course, when you are negotiating such a complex and ambitious trade agreement. It is perfectly understandable that countries will have concerns with dumping of products. There are countries that also have said that they have to fit in, that the AfCFTA must be appropriate and support their own industrial policy, their economic policy. And so they are taking time, they're being deliberate to consider the implications of trade liberalization at a large scale for their domestic markets. Again, this is also understandable that countries would be deliberate because the AfCFTA requires far-reaching economic reforms and far-reaching economic obligations. And so I'm not surprised that there are countries who are taking a little bit longer to consider all of these factors.
Yeah, the spirit of the AfCFTA was to collapse the borders, in terms of opening up for free movement of people and, of course, to do business. But what we've continued to see across some of the small regional economic blocks that are already existing, we've started seeing a level of what some people are calling protectionism of some of their products. We've seen countries saying, we do not have to export this product before we can satisfy our own internal markets. Of what danger does this kind of approach have on the spirit of the AfCFTA?
Well, trade protectionism, investment protectionism, these are always risks. And these risks are inherent in either a regional trading environment or indeed a global trade environment. We have seen at a time of crisis, in particular, we have seen when there are crises, we have seen countries increase trade or investment protectionism. So it is not a phenomenon that is unique either to Africa or to this particular moment in time. However, that said, there are rules in the AfCFTA that prevent trade protectionism, and there are rules that ensure that our markets remain open to the extent that, of course, you are a state party and bound by the rules of the AfCFTA. There are rules that require that you not discriminate against products of other countries within the free trade area itself. So that's how we intend to respond to that, is by invoking the existing rules that all countries negotiated and agreed to. I should also say that in the AfCFTA, we have a dispute settlement mechanism, and it is intended to address any concerns that countries may have about either dumping, trade protectionism, unfair practices. All of these things are contemplated in the agreement establishing the AfCFTA. And so in the implementation of the dispute settlement mechanism, we invite countries to address these concerns that they may have through the dispute settlement mechanism. On protectionism, I would say that, again, as I've said a few minutes ago, we are going in the direction where the continent has never gone before, where we are integrating a market of 1.3 billion people. And so I do expect that there will be impulses either at national level or regional level. There will be impulses that are concerned and that those impulses will express themselves in trade protectionism. We saw this in Europe at the early stages of integration in Europe. We have seen it in Asia at the early stages of integration in Asia. And I think that we should expect to see it here. How we manage it, that's where the whole of the AfCFTA and its implementation will turn. And I believe that we manage it by implementing and applying the rules that we have agreed to, the rules to keep the markets open.
Right. SG, before I let you go, I mean, 5 years ago when history was made here in Kigali, Rwanda, when the AfCFTA was actually signed here, the optimism was that, oh, we're going to start enjoying and reaping the fruits immediately. But SG, it's been 5 years. What is it that you can tell that person who that day was very enthusiastic that they'll start enjoying the fruits of this document or this deal, and they still haven't yet started seeing that? Talk to us based on the key instruments of operationalization of the AfCFTA that are needed. We know one of them is the rules of origin. What else is still pending?
Well, the first point I would make is that we should continue to be optimistic, and we should continue to celebrate. It is not easy to commence integration of 55 disparate markets. I mentioned earlier the European Union. It took the EU 72 years to reach this level, this depth of market integration. And so I think whilst we should be correctly celebrating this achievement, we should also be realistic that it's going to take time. What we have done in the last few years, and remember, from the year 2020 until very recently, 42 out of 55 countries in Africa were either in a partial or full lockdown. Borders were closed. We could not trade. And so in the last 2 years, we have had to establish the customs procedures. We have established the customs, a harmonized customs system. We have established a common set of rules of origin or local content rules. We have introduced the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, which will enable us to trade using local currency. I have to admit that many countries have been rather slow to introduce the customs systems that are required to implement the AfCFTA for us to see the goods crossing borders based on the preferences.
Also in East Africa, a mandatory reporting disclosure standard for listed corporate institutions is in the offing and could be produced in full before the end of the year 2022. Earlier this week, I spoke to CPA Moses Nyabanda, Managing Partner, PwC, Rwanda.
We're in a world full of uncertainties at this point, and the stakeholders, which is broader than our usual investor base, are really keen to understand things beyond the numbers. And the key change that we'll see going forward is incorporation of additional information above the numbers, which points towards where is this institution going in the future? Is this institution aligned to our interests as stakeholders, our interests as the community? Is this institution looking for the good of the planet? In some, we'll be looking for a lot for institutions to talk to us, in addition to their numbers, around sustainability of those institutions.
So talk about sustainability being a component that will be looked into during these financial audits and, of course, the financial reporting. But over time, issues to do with sustainability, of course, we've seen various corporate companies use that angle towards the area of the corporate social responsibility. You know, we've planted trees, you know, we are out cleaning the rivers and all that. So what are you saying? Are you saying that now it's going to be mandatory, or it's just still going to be a choice for the corporate institutions to mention these things as part of their financial reporting?
Eugene, you're right. A number of institutions have in the past attempted to say one or two things of what they're doing, including the examples you've just given. The expectation and the bar has been lifted. Now there's more for you to say, not only on the small interventions you've done at the community level, but people are quite interested around your governance pillar, quite interested around your risk processes and how you do get to manage those risks, particularly to the future. Climate is quite topical, and how you are moving towards net zero targets, for example. And the good thing now is that there's a standardization that's expected. And that standardization has been reduced into a new standard, which will be compulsory for all institutions. And that standard deals particularly with sustainability. It's currently at an exposure draft stage, but we do expect that by end of this calendar year, we'll have a standard including the implementation date.
These are some of the unique stories from East Africa this week, and our antennas are up, and we can promise you that we will be able to bring you even more compelling business stories the only way we can. I'm Eugene Anangwe from the East.
Thanks, Eugene. Now, here in West Africa, the newly appointed Group Managing Director of UBA Group, Oliver Alawuba, says the banking group has the digital banking capacity and a growing customer base across Africa to navigate the global headwinds impacting the banking sector. Earlier, CNBC Africa caught up with the new GMD to discuss the bank's plans for Africa's growing SMEs.
UBA is today present in 20 African countries. UBA is also present in key financial centers of the world. We are present in the US. We are the only African bank that's present in the US, regulated by OCC. We are present in the United Kingdom. We are present in France. And recently, we opened a branch in UAE, in Dubai Financial City. Today, what we're present, UBA can lead in Nigeria. UBA can also lead in Africa. And UBA will also lead in all countries where we are present. Our appointment is to ensure that UBA takes that leadership position in Nigeria, Africa, and every country where we are present.
But as you're looking to steer the ship, I'm trying to imagine what your strategic objectives are going forward.
We focus on the customer. The customer determines where we go and what we do. Whatever we do in UBA, we do it from the point of view of the customer. What does the customer want? Once we determine what the customer wants, we'll move. So UBA is primarily focused on customer. We have a philosophy we call customer first. The customer determines where and what UBA will do at any point in time.
Yeah, but this year has been quite a year, especially in the banking space. We've seen quite a lot of headwinds, inflation on one hand, and you are a player across many countries, and you've seen weaker currencies playing out there. But I'm trying to imagine how you're going to be looking to address some of these challenges.
We have great digital banking capabilities, and we also have growing customer base. Today, we have over 30 million customers spread across our various platforms. And those customers are transacting. 90% of our businesses today are in digital space. That's also helping us to ensure that we manage the cost of operations. Also making sure that we deliver excellent service experience to our various customers.
But looking at your footprint outside of Nigeria, I'm trying to imagine how these other markets will more or less start playing a significant role in UBA's balance sheets going forward.
We have seen growth in several markets where we play in Africa. I can tell you, we started this journey 17 years ago in Ghana. And today, UBA is doing so well in several African countries. The UBA in Africa, ex-Nigeria, is contributing almost more than 50% of our revenue business, and is growing. And we see opportunities. Mind you, Africa today, 1.4 billion people. Out of that, 65% of them are youths. There's a growing SME space in UBA, in Africa, and UBA is positioning to support SME business across Africa. There's also growing knowledge in terms of banking services. We are driving financial inclusivity in several countries where we are present.
Also seeing your earnings as well. Kudos to that, seeing that double-digit growth in the earnings there. But more or less, what's the guidance looking at the full year?
The guidance will continue. We did well in the half year, and we think we'll continue to do well even in the second half year that we're in now. We are pushing strong earnings in terms of net interest income and in terms of fees and commission. Our digital banking transactions income increasing. Today, 90% of our transactions are done digitally, and that's also pushing the revenue forward. Thank you.
Because we're also in a time where the continent is looking at the Continental Trade Pact, and I'm trying to imagine as a regional bank that has a Pan-African mandate, how that fits into your objectives going forward.
Well, quite strongly, because that's where we started. We are so happy with the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, and we believe that UBA present in 20 African countries. We clearly support that. Mind, we're also one of the banks that is selected for the pilot scheme in West Africa, and UBA is solidly focused towards intra-Africa trade.
That was Oliver Alawuba. Now we head to Ghana now, where the country's inflationary pressure rose to a 21-year high at 33.9% in August, while its food inflation stood at 34.4%. Courage Boti, an economist at GCB Capital, highlights this development and the possibility of a decline in subsequent months.
MD of the IMF signaled, I think somewhere last week, that they are in talks with the government and the program could be in place by end of year. Those were the indications, but there were also signals that the government is seeking for a proposal on debt restructuring, or the IMF is seeking a proposal on debt restructuring from our government, and a number of other thorny issues to be trashed out, really. So we are all hopeful that probably negotiations advance and we have a program in place by the 2023 budget cycle. That will be a big relief. As to whether we'll get something before the meetings in October, I can't say authoritatively, but we are hopeful that probably there is some progress or some very important breakthroughs before that meeting or during that meeting in October.
Courage Boti, an economist with GCB Capital. Now, this brings us to the end of Africa Business Weekly, and a big thanks to Tanya and Eugene for the regional updates. I'm Akin Obakeye, and we'll be back same time next week for more weekly business stories across sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you for watching.